Well, let's speak now to one of the architects of the Trump administration's Middle East policy, Jason Greenblatt. He is the former White House Middle East envoy, now a partner in our crowd, and he speaks to us from New Jersey. And Jason, let's maybe from your perspective, let's look at this day from a more historical perspective. The first commercial flight to Abu Dhabi, an El Al flight that went over Saudi airspace, and of course, this coming just days after the UAE legally canceled its decades-long boycott of the Jewish state.
Well, it's great to be here with you on this amazing, historic, and unique day. And you mentioned multiple things that are going on now since the signing of the Abraham Accord, led by President Trump, with the courageous and bold leadership of Prime Minister Netanyahu and Sheikh Mohammed bin Zayed. And you correctly point out another really, really important point, which is we also need to thank the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia for allowing this historic flight, this El Al flight, and congratulations to El Al for this flight, for flying over Saudi airspace. It shows that there is tremendous change in the region. And I'll tell you that I'm always on the call. I'm always on the phone with friends from the United Arab Emirates and Qatar and Saudi Arabia. Today was UAE and Saudi Arabia, and everyone was talking about it. Everyone was excited about it. Everyone is excited for the possibility of what's going to happen in the coming period.
Well, let's talk a little about those possibilities, Jason. There was some comments out of Saudi Arabia that indicate a full resumption of relations between Israel and, for example, Saudi Arabia may not happen before a peace agreement with the Palestinians. We did hear some of those other comments from those other Gulf states. But is it possible we will see steps forward towards normalization, something like along the lines of what we did see today from Saudi Arabia in this sort of coming period, or if you want to call it interim period?
Well, I think that's exactly how you should look at it. We need to be patient. We need to accept the fact that this conflict has been going on for decades. The leadership is trying its best to steer each of these countries into the right direction. We can't expect miracles overnight. We have to respect the steps that they're willing to make. We should be grateful for the steps that they're willing to make. And I think that over time, we will see them. Sometimes things will happen rapidly, as they did with the United Arab Emirates. And again, I must stress, having been, since I was at the White House release of the peace plan back in January, and the ambassador, Yusuf Al-Otaiba, was there and was commending them for being there together with Oman and Bahrain. But look how quickly things have changed, so that Sheikh Mohammed bin Zayed actually went forward with the Abraham Accord. Quickly the phone lines opened up, government agencies were speaking to one another, and now you have an Israeli delegation there, apparently welcomed with a red carpet as Mayor Ben Shabbat. I think that was his voice that I heard on the show, and offering to welcome them back here. Each one of these steps is quite historic, should be commended, and should be encouraged.
Right. Certainly within the context, the glacial pace of Middle East diplomacy the last few days or weeks have been breathtaking. One thing hasn't changed, the Palestinian point of view. It was repeated again today. They are not budging. We did hear Jared Kushner again try to reach out to the Palestinians. Do you have any confidence that that attitude may change in the coming months as this normalization process between Israel and the UAE and maybe some of those other steps we spoke about go forward?
Well, if it doesn't, it is just another huge and tragic mistake on the part of the Palestinian leadership. They should view this as a tremendous opportunity to come in and see what a bright future could be for the entire region. They need to get their house in order. You've heard me speak about this before. Unless and until the Palestinian leadership in Ramallah can figure out how to handle the situation in Gaza, where 2 million Palestinians are suffering under the iron rule of this terrorist organization, Hamas, nothing can happen. But at the very least, the Palestinian leadership in Ramallah should recognize us for an opportunity. And also they have to recognize that they no longer have a veto card, as Prime Minister Netanyahu had said, and I've said before. They are going to miss this incredible progress, and what a shame that would be for the Palestinian people.
Jason, let's try to put this more in the context now of U.S. Middle East policy, especially vis-a-vis Iran, because we do see the U.S. drawing its forces down in Iraq, but at the same time talking about selling F-35s to the UAE. There's increased security cooperation we're learning out between the UAE and Israel. Is this some new paradigm for the Trump administration to rather than have direct U.S. involvement, to have its allies be on the front line against Iran?
I wouldn't say it's a new paradigm. I think when President Trump came into office, he strategically decided to focus on Iran. He wants to have the region focus on Iran, be united with respect to Iran. And one of the things we should start doing is also changing the conversation with respect to Iran. Israel is always wrongfully accused of being an occupying power. That is a terrible way to describe Israel. But you know who is an occupying power? Iran is an occupying power. Iran, in effect, occupies Gaza. In effect, it occupies Lebanon and so many other countries in the region where they spend money trying to create instability, trying to attack Israel, causing suffering throughout the region. The conversation has to be laser focused on Iran right now, and all the countries in the region understand that, and that's why this deal is so important.
All right, Jason Greenblatt, thank you for joining us on The Rundown.
Thank you so much for having me.